There's honestly nothing better than a hot bowl of bak kwa or Vietnamese beef stew in the colder months. The tender pieces of beef shank and carrots, stewed in the warm and aromatic broth, and then dipping a nice crusty Vietnamese baguette that soaks up all that delicious flavor. And when you have that first bite, it instantly teleports you to the streets of Vietnam. This is what comfort food is all about for me, and today we'll be making my version of it, so do me a favor and make sure you like, comment, share, and save this video. Alright y'all, remember to wash your hands. Then the first thing we'll do is process our beef. Now, beef shank is my preferred cut of beef for bak kwa, as all the fat and connective tissues in the meat make for a soft and meaty cut when stewed. If I was making this for my white friends though, that have never eaten bak kwa, I'd opt for a cut like chuck roast or brisket as it's a little more familiar. We'll parboil our shank to get rid of all the impurities and scum, and we'll also give this a quick rinse. Then I'm gonna cut my beef shank into about 1.5 to 2 inch pieces. I don't want to cut them too small as it will shrink a bit as it stews. Then I'm gonna get all of the beef shank into a gallon Ziploc bag. And then we're gonna let this marinate with some bak kwa seasonings, which is just a blend of paprika, star anise, garlic, chili, onion, ginger, and cloves. And you can find this at your local Vietnamese grocery store for just a couple bucks, but I'll also put my affiliate link in the caption for you to purchase it directly on Amazon. To the marinade, I'll add a touch of salt, a splash of soy sauce, and some annatto seed oil for the color. I'll get this mixed up, and I'm gonna let this marinate for at least 1 to 2 hours, but overnight is better. And if you like this recipe, and you wanna learn how to make more of your favorite Vietnamese and Asian dishes, make sure you subscribe and turn on your notifications to stay up to date on all my latest posts. While our beef shank is vibing out, we'll move on to our beef tendon. Now, this is an ingredient that is completely optional, but I love the unique texture of the tendon. The texture is a little bit interesting to describe because it's both soft and slightly chewy, as well as crunchy, if that makes sense. First, I'm gonna give the tendon a quick parboil, and we'll rinse the tendon off in some cold water. And this step will help remove some of the beefy odor of the tendon. Now, tendon does take a bit of time to cook through, so I'm going to cook the tendon in some boiling salted water for about an hour before it's added to the beef later. While the tendon is cooking, let's move on and get all of our prep work done. First up, let's prep our aromatics. I have a white onion, and I'm just gonna cut this in half. Now, half of this is going to be charred, while the other half will be sliced thinly to use as a garnish. I'm gonna take half that onion and cut the onion against the grain, and then using my fingernail as a guide to cut to get the onions paper thin. And then I also like soaking my onions in cold water for about 5 minutes to help reduce some of its raw bite. Next up, we have our ginger, and I just have about a 2-inch nub, and I'll just cut this in half, and don't worry about peeling it either. Now I'm gonna get both the onion and ginger into a dry pan on medium-high heat to char, but if you have an open flame on your range, charring it that way is even better. Now to the pan, I'm also going to add a couple of dry star anise and a cinnamon stick to toast off as well. Once that's done, we'll move that to the side, and then I have 3 stalks of lemongrass. I'm going to cut off the tops and bottom and peel out the outer layer if it is extra old looking. And then using the back of my knife, I'm just going to bruise it to help it release more of its flavor later on. And then I'll just cut it in half. Now here are all the aromatics I'm using today, and in addition to everything you've seen, you'll also notice a couple of bay leaves. And to make my life easier, I'm actually going to stuff all of this into a cheesecloth bag to make it easier to fish out later instead of finding each individual piece in my bok ha. Once all of the aromatics are in the bag, we'll move that to the side and get the rest of the prep work done. Now, I have a shallot that I'll finely mince, and this is going to be used to saute with our beef later. Then I have some extra large carrots, and I'll just peel and cut these into about 1-inch pieces. Once all of our herbs and veggies have been processed, and our tendon has been cooking for about an hour, I'm going to drain it and give that a quick rinse in cold water to make it easier to handle. And then I'm going to cut the tendon into about 1-inch pieces, and unlike the beef shank that'll shrink when it cooks, beef tendon will actually absorb and expand in the broth. So we want to cut it a bit smaller than we do the shank so that they come out roughly the same size. Now once we have all the prep work done, it's finally time to cook. Our beef shank has been marinating for quite a while now, so to a big pot, I'm going to add in a couple tablespoons of annatto seed oil, and I'll drop in our minced shallots. We'll saute this for just a couple minutes or until fragrant. We'll add in a tablespoon of minced garlic. And then I'll add in a couple tablespoons of tomato paste and cook out the raw flavor. We'll add in our marinated beef shank and brown that off for just a few minutes. Go ahead and add in your sliced beef tendon. And then we're gonna add in a whole can of Coco Rico. The Coco Rico will add in a really subtle coconut essence and will also help tenderize the beef. If you can't find this, you can also just substitute it with coconut water or even regular tap water. Now, I will say here is where my bok ha tends to differ from a lot of other recipes. I prefer mine more soupy as opposed to more stew-like, plus I like eating mine with noodles, so I am going to add in about 5 quarts of water. Now, if your preference is for a true stew-like consistency, I would reduce the amount of water to about 3 to 4 quarts, and then I would also make a cornstarch slurry to add right at the end, just to give it a little bit more viscosity to the bok ha. Make the recipe your own though, and adjust it to your own preferences. Now we'll bring this up to a rolling boil, skim off the impurities, and then we'll reduce the heat to low. I'll season this with 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, a 1-inch nub of rock sugar, 2 tablespoons of MSG, and then I'll toss in our bag of aromatics. And finally, I'll add in another 2 tablespoons of our bak seasonings. We'll give that a good mix and then let that simmer covered for about an hour to an hour and a half, or until the beef shank is mostly fork tender. And timing will vary depending on how thick you cut your beef shank. Now once it's gotten to that point, I'm gonna fish out our bag of aromatics. And then we'll add in our carrots. I'm gonna let this simmer for another 15 minutes or so, or until the carrots are cooked through and soft. Then right at the end, I'm gonna season this with about 3 tablespoons of fish sauce. Give your bak a taste test and adjust the seasonings to your preferences. And then all that's left to do is to serve it up. Now to a bowl, we'll ladle in a generous amount of our beef shank, tendon, carrots, and broth. We'll garnish this simply with some of our thinly sliced white onions. And then we'll just smack some Thai basil to get it to activate its flavor. And then we're pairing this up with a crusty and light Vietnamese baguette. Our dipping sauce is just some salt and pepper with some lime wedges. And then we'll add in some more Thai basil on the side for good measure. And just like that, you've made authentic Vietnamese beef stew at home. As always, the recipe and measurements are on my blog at feedthepudge.com. And if you've made it this far, let me know in the comments section, what's your favorite meal to eat during the winter? Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy. That's comfort in a bowl. You gotta make this.